Do you ever give like a scenario by which, like, if you make this decision because you believe that your soon to be ex doesn't have the capacity to care for the child or
Right.
doesn't have the skills because they've never done it? I mean, how often do you hear that?
Yeah, very often.
Yeah. And, so what we do in coaching is that I was like, yeah, you know why they don't have the skills? It's because they haven't. And I always say to them, you would be very surprised on how quick people learn how to do things when they are given the opportunity to.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And sometimes that is a common scenario that you're describing where, they've got a hearing coming up and we're trying to avoid that hearing, right? That is one of the goals. We're trying to get them to work this out versus a judge deciding for them, in which case statistically they're back in court in 6 months to a year because they don't like that decision, right? So I explained to them, don't you want to be a part of this decision? Don't you want to be part of this plan? If you don't have confidence that the other parent can do their job in parenting your child and not harming your child, how do we know until we give them the chance, right? So let's say that the parent that they don't trust wants 50-50. Well, this parent that's holding their position doesn't trust that other parent is saying, well, there's no way we're going 50-50. I said, okay, so I'll make a suggestion. Can we try five for a period of time, a trial period, I'll call it. And if they prove themselves, then we can give them more time, right? In other words, why not put it to the test? Because your only alternative is handing it over to a third party who's not going to listen to your whole story the way I'm listening to it. We have, let's say, 2 to 4 hours to discuss these options, whereas you go before a judge, they may give you 15 or 20 minutes to tell your side of the story, and they didn't want to get down to business. I mediate in a dozen different counties in Maryland, but in my particular county, we've got 13 judges on the bench. And so that's great because I can tell my clients when I do what's called reality testing, I can say, okay, let's say you don't agree to this right now, and you go to court and you hand it over to a judge. There are 13 different judges. There might be 13 different ways this can go. Are you willing to take that chance? Because you don't know which way that judge is going to go. You think that you're going to be right, but I can't tell you how many people go into court thinking they're right, the judge is going to see it my way, and they're surprised. So are you willing to take that gamble, or do you really want to try to dig in here and see if we can work this out? And it's going to take some compromise. You're probably not going to get everything you want. But again, it's what's best for your child. And what's best for your child, quite frankly, is when you two are working together because the conflict is what creates the trauma for the child. So you've got to figure out how to meet them. If it's not halfway, you've got to give in with something. So let's prioritize what those things you're not willing to give in on, and what things you can probably live with, right?
Yeah, I do the same thing before they step into the room with you. We talk about what is that desired outcome? Like, what do you envision your life looking like, feeling like? And then let's go back to the details and let's get some priorities on paper. So when they do walk into mediation, they know very specifically where their priorities are and what they're willing to negotiate around. Most of the thoughts are just thoughts. They're stories that they're making up in their head about assumptions around the way someone else is going to react, behave, etc. And again, they don't know that for a fact. They just assume that it's going to be the same old, same old. Right. So we try to get them in a different mindset before they move into working with you, because again, if they have that mindset management skill, they can talk themselves and coach themselves as you're working with them to get to an agreement on specific, very sensitive matters. They can be like, okay, well, I prioritized X, Y, and Z. And those are the things that it looks like I've been able to have float to the top to go my way. But I have to be able to manage my mindset around the other things. And specifically, I do really know for a fact that the whole thing around capabilities and capacity and abilities to like raise children, if one person's been the primary caregiver and that's where their identity is, that's where they believe that's who they are. They don't believe that the other person can do it. And they might not do it the same. And that's the other thing, right? It's like, you're like, yeah, well, maybe they're not going to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches exactly like you are. But you know what? They get to have other things. And there's going to be other ways of kind of getting up in the morning and getting the kids to school. And, you try to create some level of consistency, but sometimes flexibility is good for kids.
Absolutely. And to your point, it's great for a child to see different ways of doing things. The fact is that you two share this child together. Both of you, in the court size, both of you have a say. Both
Yeah,
of you have a right to be with that child and make decisions for that child. So the sooner you accept that, then we can start to get to work on moving what's best from this point forward versus staying stuck in what he did to me or what she did to me and how this person used to operate. And as far as you know, sometimes these people have been apart for 6 months to a year or longer, and they don't know how the other person lives their life. They don't know if they've changed. All they know is what they experienced with them. And so I try to convince them to give the other person a chance to prove you wrong because that's what you have to be able to work together. That's what you want. You want them to prove you wrong. Don't you want your child to have two good parents versus the one that you see now, which is a horrible parent? Let's give it a chance and explore it.
absolutely. And I also really encourage my clients to support one another in their new roles, meaning that I know with me and my ex, like, he always managed all the finances and, I always worked and made money, but I also did like all the food shopping. I did 90% of the cooking. And we kind of had a divide and conquer for some like kid activity registrations, but I did all the medical for the kids. And instead of just throwing him to the wolves and saying, like, just go figure it out, he asked questions about the grocery store. He now has different places that he might go to food shop, but like the kids might like food from certain places. And so I wasn't going to throw him to the wolves. And cooking, like that was so overwhelming to him to have to put the three meals on the table every day. And I encouraged him and I wanted him to be successful in making food that the kids liked. I didn't want them to be like, oh, mom's food's so much better. But there are so many people who want that. They want that
Yeah.
feedback, like I'm better. And I'm
Yeah.
like, right? It's like, why? Why do you need to be better? Because it's about the kids.
Well, I'm sure it's one of the reasons you do what you do now because you are sort of the exception to what I see as the rule in these cases, which is parents just want to prove each other wrong and prove to the child that they're the better parent. And it's not the way to go about it because what I
No.
remind parents of is that a child instinctively knows that mom and dad are a part of her, right? So when mom makes a negative comment about dad, the child takes it personally. And that again is a source of trauma. You can't go there. I see parents do it all the time. And this is where I'll be firm in my mediation role. And I'll say, you just can't do that
Yeah.
because that's not good for the kid. You're forgetting why we're here.
Yeah. You are my fifth guest, by the way, who has used that exact example. The
Yeah.
50-50. The every child is 50% of mom and 50% of dad.
Yep.
And if you are a parent disparaging the other parent, the child consciously or subconsciously is saying, I'm 50% bad because
Yeah.
I am part of that parent that the other one is talking badly about. And it's so amazing and so great in the divorce professional world. Like everybody, every role, we are all on the same page with that. We're all pushing out the same message. And it's so important for children. And I just can't say enough about what you're doing because I just want more people to recognize the fact that they've got to work on themselves in order for them to not have and create long lasting trauma for their kids.